All right. And I think we have everybody on who is planning to come. So yeah, please kick us off, Sam.
Okay, so this meeting, just at a high level, I'm really excited to hear the feedback and results of the research that you've done. I just wanted to, as a reminder, say that we've got requirements, customer requirements that we've got feedback on and that we're looking to meet. And I'm just, really excited to hear, the results of that research and how Wazuh will or won't work, or what the recommendations are to help address those. At the end of the day, I think our engineering solution here is 100% flexible as long as we're able to find a way to address the customer requirements as best we can. So with that, I'll turn it over to the engineering team.
Thanks, Sam. So just to re-clarify, and I made some comments this morning, so I don't think anybody got a chance to read them because I just made them just very recently. Can we just re-clarify some of the requirements, make sure I understand them? I put some comments around file integrity. So file integrity monitoring, would a good way to say that would be detect if a file has changed that shouldn't have per standard and customer written policies? Does that capture it?
So if we take a step back from the terminology a little bit, I guess if we talk about the use case, there's a lot of protections in place to make sure that, the thing that the container is being generated from is legitimate, that it's being generated from a valid image, that, there's a lot of protections to make sure that the thing you're deploying is actually the thing you want running in production. There's a piece that's missing, which is, once I have something running in production, how do I make sure that it still hasn't changed on an ongoing basis?
In the way that
so I've got a running container. How do I make sure that that container hasn't been tampered with, the configuration files haven't been messed with, that it still is the same code base and configuration that I initially launched from my trusted image? So that would be the use case that we're looking to address with that one.
Okay, and then application allow listing. The way I interpret it is only allow applications to run if they're explicitly allowed by the standard and customer written policies. Some policies will block applications from starting, and some policies will allow applications to start but log the start as potentially suspicious. Does that capture
Correct?
Well? Okay. And then active response blocking. I misunderstood this one a couple times, not because it wasn't written well, just me. But the way I would summarize this, and let me know if I'm understanding correctly, allow specific activities on the container to be detected based on rules and allow those rules to run scripts to take action. Does that capture that well?
Yeah, that's true. That's a little bit prescriptive in the solution. I don't think it has to run scripts, but, do something in response, beyond just logging. Can we actually respond to the event and solve the problem rather than passively observing it?
Got it. Okay, so too prescriptive, but in the right direction. And lastly, just a question, not a clarification. So acceptable performance overhead, definitely a requirement. What it reminds me of is we could put, for example, high load on a container or moderate load on a container, which doesn't cause performance issues for the applications running on the container, but may drive up like cloud costs to run those containers. Should we be like sustained moderate CPU load for hours, like would drive up cloud hosting costs, potentially at least. So should we be looking for both, or just the performance impact?
No, both. Definitely customers are going to care about the additional cost. I would say it is all a little bit relative as well. I mean, we're not going to be able to do anything without incurring some additional AWS cost. I think really the question is, what order of magnitude is that on? Is it something that, is stomachable compared to, what it would be without us? Or is it like we're multiplying the cost by 10x?
Yep. Okay. No, makes sense. So those are my just clarification questions. Why don't we turn it over, not read everything in the doc, of course, but turn it over to Tiago and then to Alan to maybe go through your findings and recommendations and then take questions from the group. Sound good?
It's probably like 1 a.m. for Thiago, so he's probably not attending.
Oh, sorry.
Here.
Why am I thinking Thiago? Yeah, Thiago put notes. I saw his name there. I really meant Zamir and Alan. I don't know why I did that. Apologies, Thiago. Zamir, I see his name there, but then I'm looking at you. So yeah, no wonder for the blank stare of what is Wayne talking about. It's entirely appropriate. So Zamir and Alan, who wants to go first?
Yeah, I believe I can summarize quickly how we split our work for Investigate Wazuh. So I took the agent part and Zamir took the server part, and we tried to build a solution that will use Kubernetes, and that's basically it. We wanted to address all requirements and see how we can use that. So yeah, maybe Zamir, you'd like to start about the server, and then we can switch to agent, because that will be, I believe, the longest part.
Sure. So I wrote a couple of comments here. Some of them are not straight related to the Wazuh thing. It's more like just the number 4, for example. I think those are things that we can keep in mind for next time that we have a PoC like this. But like going focus on Wazuh, what I noticed that it has lots of features. It's widely used, but it really feels that it's an application for dedicated servers. You don't feel much of the things that the containerized environment provides, and especially Kubernetes. They are kind of counter to that. So you have lots of features, for example, that they assume that the OS is going to be long running. They don't assume that in Kubernetes environment, the pod can be destructed and then recreated from a fresh image, for example. So that's why I think most of the people, they had a trouble understanding this Wazuh for Kubernetes, is because we are trying kind of to get a solution that was created before Kubernetes even was created, or the same year, and kind of trying to fit that. And then it raised a couple of issues in terms of compatibility, workload, and the main features. So with that said, there's another point as well. In Docker, we have usually like 3 or 4 types of image types. One of them is the regular OS feature, OS image that we have with the Ubuntu, Alpine, and these OSs. There's a second one called intermediary that kind of build up in a second image. And the most popular image right now is distroless from Google. It means that it's not going to have a full OS over there. It's basically just the runtime to run the application that you want. And also scratch images. So scratch images also doesn't have OS. It's very bare bones for you, for example, to run your Go application. This goes back to the point that I was mentioning about the difference between building a security solution for a dedicated server that's going to be run forever and accessed by everybody and never maybe be rebuilt from a container environment. And these open up a little bit for example, for vulnerabilities in terms of CVEs. For Kubernetes, you can grab the CVEs you can scan the CVEs through the image that you have. So it's you might think it's the same problem, but just the main difference that we're not forgetting the customer requirement. Is just as it's a different environment, the approach to get to the point is slightly different, and then change more of the whole paradigm for that. So there's solutions for scanning the image that you have, and you can see the CVEs there, and you can see a couple of other things because each image is built in layers. So then you can scan each layer to see the vulnerabilities there. It's not much of a new problem over there. And okay, so
just a quick question on that. You mentioned the different image types. Are you talking about the server or the agent in this case? The server only supports the one kind, or can the agent only install into the one kind?
It would be more for the agent, because the server itself, we need to be using the Wazuh server anyways image. So they probably I think they built the Wazuh image for the server based on a light version of Ubuntu.
Okay. But you're saying that our agent monitoring would be limited just to the regular or OS-based type of images?
Exactly. Yeah, let's say
Got
that
it.
someone used the distroless application image for Go. They cannot use the agent because the agent's not going to be able to have access to the features on the OS. Most of the features are really on the system level, and then you lose a lot of this. I'm not going to talk too much about the agent. Otherwise, I'm going to say most of the stuff that Alan has to say about the agents. Sorry for that. So I think this paradigm is very important for us because most of us are new to Kubernetes, and on top of that, our team is also new. So it's to us a good experience for this. Okay, so moving on a little bit, the load itself, for example, they made available the Kubernetes charts, not Helm charts, but they made available the installation for Kubernetes. And basically you have to install Elasticsearch with Filebeat, Elasticsearch and Kibana, and also Nginx. So it's Wayne was mentioning the load before. It's something that we have to keep in mind that it's not, I don't want to compare with other solutions because it starts to be like more or less like a I don't know, team competition or something like this. So, but there are the most of the solutions for Kubernetes, they're going to have just a daemon, or they're going to have a simple deployment to have these similar features. But for Wazuh, it's pretty heavy because of this nature of the Wazuh for this. So then, but I played around. I was able to run that on GKE, and I was able to run local as well. So there's a little bit of flexibility. We just need to change the storage class, because the main version is focused on AWS, EKS, and from GitLab so far, I think the most of the solutions people usually make it first working on GKE, but that would be something that we can get a permission to have some EKS accounts and play around with that. And yeah, so in terms of features, I mentioned before, I think Kubernetes have solutions for most of the features that we are talking about, but maybe it's not going to be a single solution. And I understand that from the product perspective, that might be an issue because we need to have lots of solutions for tackling the same thing. Let's see one more.
Can I just ask a question about that statement?
Yeah.
So I wouldn't necessarily say, at least from my point of view, that it's a problem that you need multiple things to address the needs. The concern came in on the long-term viability and management of it. I've been other places, maybe places that Alan's also been, where we decided to come in and solve a problem, and we're like, oh, we will use Couch as the database and Redis is our message bus. And then 6 months go by and we're like, well, that's not really meeting our needs. So why don't we throw in 0MQ to improve our message bus capacity? Oh, wait, maybe we should switch over to MongoDB. And by the time we were done 2 years later, we had 3 databases, I think 4 message buses running Rails 3 and Rails 4, and so the concern comes in that what is the long-term viability and stability based off the choice we're making? Not necessarily how many things are stapled together to meet the goals of that Sam has laid out. I don't know if that makes sense. That clarification, just like if you came back and said, well, it's these 6 open source projects and we feel that that's easily maintainable for us, I think you'd get a thumbs up from Sam if it's meeting the requirements. I just don't want to be in a situation where we're like, oh, wow. And by the way, I had this reaction when I installed Wazuh myself. I'm like, wow, I have to install Elasticsearch and Splunk. Like, just to kind of give you that context, right? And by the way, Alan's laughing because he knows I'm right. Like that was our world for like 3 years.
Yeah, that can be the case for sure. And one thing was that, let me see here. Which one was that? So they don't have a Helm chart defined, so we would have to maintain the Helm chart by ourselves. I know we did that in the past with a couple of things. Even the first version of Ceiling, I think it was maintained by us in a Helm charts perspective. So that would be a little bit of maintenance over there. And that would be for the client. so just for the server, most of the things I'm talking doesn't apply to the agent. The agent is a beast by itself. And I don't want to talk too much more on that. Yeah, so the last thing is just, it's similar to the first point that I mentioned about, is that most of the vectors and the attack surface from Kubernetes, it's usually looked from different perspectives. The fact that you have an image pre-built and that you can scan the image. And then as soon as you have the image, you have access to the image itself, like Docker daemon. I know that Sam mentioned that we are past this problem, and we are concerned with the problem of the deployed, but I'm just trying to bring to us the culture that there is very different ways of tackling the problem. And also, if you have, let's say, let's say that you build an image, everything is all right, the person has a permission to have Docker daemon, and the other person has a permission to use kubectl, and everything is okay. But if the image is built with, let's say, host network, then whatever happens inside that image is going to hurt the whole cluster. So those capabilities for Docker, I think most of the time they could be something very simple, like not allowing the person to have a root user. It's going to be a single parameter that you send to the Docker. But it's something that if we always think with the mindset of dedicated servers, it's something that it was not there, didn't exist at that time. So I think this back and forth between the solutions is going to be something that we might be facing in the future as well. So I hope that summarized a little bit of the points for the server. If you guys have any questions.
Thanks for that summary. I don't have any questions off of that.
Yeah,
right.
good stuff.
So,
I think I may have had a question or two. Let me just look at my comments here. Or just maybe some things to highlight. I know one big difference between a Falco style solution and a Wazuh style solution, or an agent needs to be installed for Wazuh to operate. Sam has found with the research he did that customers are okay, at least the customers we've talked to so far, are okay with putting an agent on each container. Just worth noting. The other comment I really just wanted to highlight, Zamir, you said number 11. I wanted to emphasize that the threat vectors and attack surfaces on dedicated server scenarios have some differences and are usually approached from a different angle. There are big differences. There's some similarities, but that is a very salient comment.
Thank you.
Yeah, I believe what Zamir also mentioned is about on not every single image will be able to install agents. So that's the problem.
Yeah, good point. Like serverless environments.
Yeah, I mean distroless. Yeah.
Yeah, yeah, absolutely.
I'd say the main difference for me is not. Sorry, he's gone. Please. Yeah, so I was saying that the main difference for me between Wazuh and Falco is not related to the agent itself. It's mostly related to the how the product is actually working. Wazuh is actually something doing polling to get the information that they need to take decisions. But Falco is not using polling. They are using an event-based loop that is much, much more efficient than polling that are all the time. Like if you want to do file integrity with Wazuh, you have to look at all the files that you want to monitor, store somewhere the checksum of these files, and run again the same loop and check the checksums with the database that you have. It's very tedious. It's going to use a lot of time, a lot of resources, a lot of I/O. Whereas if you take exactly the same case in Falco, the only thing that Falco is doing is defining a rule saying, tell me if any of these files is getting accessed in read mode or write mode. If you have that on write mode, any process that will write on that file that will generate an event that will be forwarded wherever you want. So it's much, much more lighter than what Wazuh would do. And that's the case for every single requirement that we have here. So that's why I want to emphasize that Wazuh is not fitted for that kind of process. It's something that is great for bare metal servers because you don't have any other choices. But in the Kubernetes world, it's something that is really different. And when it comes to a container that will be compromised, for example, the first thing that you want to do is not to fix that container. The first thing you want to do is to stop the container, save the container, because you need forensics to figure out what's going on and what was the issue really. And you will respawn a new container from the same image that will be completely clean. So you don't need to block per se the process that is starting. You need to understand what's going on first. So not so sure about the requirements. Does that make sense?
So your comment makes sense. I guess the concern I have with it, and it's later in the document, I probably won't, I have to drop at the bottom of the hour, so I probably will have to stick up async on it, is like part of the reason for looking beyond Falco, because trust me, Philippe, like last year you convinced me Falco was the right solution, right? That is that I did not find in my research, and I don't think Sam did either, a solution to the out of band deployment that Falco is. The companies that are using Falco and are blocking, Philippe, is that not really your house behind you? Is that a screen picture? Because like you started scratching your face and your hand disappeared, along with your face. So
you got
okay.
I have a new spot, but that's my living room actually.
Yeah, you distracted me when your hand disappeared into your face. It was like you just had like the one side of your face left. All the companies that are doing Falco in a blocking mode, like Sysdig, like that's a commercial offering they built. And when like I quickly Googled the stuff that even Alan mentions later, and then we'll let him explain it. None of those say they turned Falco into an active blocking mode intrusion prevention. They give you visibility, but if you're really wanting to prevent proactively, that's what's missing. And that's, you know, maybe Falco's the right thing to start with, and we figure out how we want to get deeper in the containers later. Sam was suggesting Falco, or was it? Because when he looked at his requirements, both his customer research, analyst research, whatnot, there are things that just aren't available in Falco. Like, like going back to what I said to Zamir, if you solve Sam's requirements and that's Falco and other things, and you feel confident on that, again, and I think Sam would be okay with that. I feel like the conversation becomes a comparison of the two and why Falco is so much better. But then it's not, which by the way, I agree, in a cloud native environment, it's way better, but it doesn't address but we know customers want to be able to have visibility in the container. They want to be able to check file integrity in the container. They want to do all these things that just Falco does not have visibility into. Does that make sense to everyone?
It does. With the other kinds, as I read through all this, there are some things that neither Falco nor Wazuh do that are in the requirements or do well. And it's not a negative on either solution nor negative on the requirements that Sam put together. That's actually, in my opinion, a positive on the requirements. It says what customers are asking for, in the analysis that Sam has done is showing that there isn't a good solution for this out there that really meets the top customers' requirements, and that's where we can really excel. That's at least how I see it.
So this is an opportunity for all of us to be awesome and solve a problem that doesn't have a solution, right?
Or at least not an open source solution today.
That being said, why don't we turn it over to Alan? And Alan, why don't you give us the not summary, but you know, the I don't know, some level of detail of discussion like Zamir did on your findings.
Yeah. Let me start by sharing my screen. Actually, I wrote a lot in the document, so I do believe you'll not have time to you did not have time to read it, and that's fine. I'll try to talk a little bit what I did and how I try to compare those two solutions, and but at the same time I want to like share with you the other findings and the other solutions that we could use, not specifically to Wazuh or Falco. So what I did, I created super simple Go web service that basically has like 3 options. Like you can ping IP address. If you've ever played with capture the flag or anything like it, it's just, you know, it just shows you the vulnerabilities in the app itself. And deployment for Docker. So for Docker without Wazuh, so this is like regular Go Docker file and for Wazuh that we need to get the script that I wrote to install the agent and then run it and then get the all packages. So that's the possible way to get and have installed the Wazuh agent into the container. Of course, what Zamir was talking about is about the image, the base image that we can use. So here I'm using Ubuntu. If that application have to run in different environments like distroless or Stretch, it will not be possible to install an agent simply because it requires to have some things from the system, right? So yeah, and the application, the service, everything's here. Okay, so I'll just go one by one and maybe show you some demo of what, and I will just do the demo in both environments and we'll see if we have any events in Wazuh and if we have any events in Falco. So okay, let me go here. I'll just use this one today. I don't believe we're gonna have time to test the other ones. Okay, so under the hood here, I have Falco running in the cluster that is checking some things currently that's happening. I hadn't got time to configure it like fully and properly, so it will report some things that are happening. These are okay, like Google Accounts daemon and other things, but that's fine. I really didn't want to. I wanted to do it quickly. So in terms of file integrity monitoring, Falco by default has some rules, but you need to write them. Actually, that's the whole solution. You have the solution that gives you the events, and you need to write rules and macros to detect and react upon them. I mean alerting some other services, or and I'll get to active response in a moment. And for Wazuh, by default we have rules. It performs scan periodically, what Philippe said, and scans directly in real time if you want, but it's not by default. So by default, it will scan them every 6 hours, I believe, or 10 hours, and will compare those MD5 hashes or SHA-1. Okay, so I'll start by doing the let's say I want to actually, what I'll do. Okay, normally it will do the ping, right? So it is like normal application, like it should work like this. But I tricked it, so I can now execute some message comment on the container. So I've executed the cat. So okay, in Falco I was able to get that easily because I have a rule that does it for me. And if I want to do the same here, I haven't got any option actually to detect that right now because I haven't changed any file. I just ran some script on the container, but that's possibly because I was not able to configure fully Wazuh. I really hope that Thiago will be able to help us since he has more experience with Wazuh. I went through the documentation. I couldn't find anything that supports it, but that's one thing. So I can do more. Now I can do, I don't know, let me do something like this. I'll just do what every hacker is doing. So I'll just include some file like to the system, and I was able to do it. So Falco recognized that on ATC I opened the file that is called hacked, and I added something there, and I'll do the same here for Wazuh, and we're going to check if it will recognize it or not. I don't want to wait for it because the event might not happen that often, and I can do more things with it. I don't change the template of the application, but I'll go further. The next thing and that's the file integrity monitoring. We want to be able to check if the file was changed or not. So the main difference between Falco and Wazuh is that Wazuh, you need to configure it to support real-time changes, and with Falco you have that out of the box because this is how it was designed and it's working, right? For image signature verification, I believe we're going to have another meeting about that because neither Falco or Wazuh has the capability to verify if your images are signed or not, and we need to work with other teams on that to introduce secure container registry and other things. We need to be able to sign those containers. Possibly with Falco, you could detect that someone is trying to start a container that it's not signed, but that's up to us how we're going to write those rules. The interesting part is application allow listings, because I was not able to find in Falco and Wazuh a way to do it, because Falco only detects things. Wazuh can react, it can have active response, but active response is not something that should do the application allow listing. So I was going through the whole solution and trying to find something that will be native to the Kubernetes world. What I found is AppArmor. Actually, you can read about it later, I believe. AppArmor is a part of Linux kernel security, so it allows you to add to your system some profiles. So these like example of the profile. I have a profile, and this profile will allow me to use ping. And I'm adding, those are my capabilities. I would like to be able to use the ping application, but I would like to deny also all rights to the etc file system. So now if I'll go to deployment, and I'll, so see, I've prepared small application that it's actually loading the AppArmor.
Quick step back. So AppArmor integrates how with the container?
So yeah, I created a small application. Actually, I just took it from the examples on Google Kubernetes repository. So it's basically, it looks for this config map. It looks for files in it, and whenever there is a new file in config map, this daemon is working on every node to load the profile into the node, right? So it takes the profile from here.
Sounds like you don't need to put an agent in each container to use AppArmor. Instead, it integrates at the not positively or negatively, but it integrates similarly to Falco in terms of you don't touch each container. It integrates with Kubernetes itself.
Yeah, basically that's true.
Okay.
And actually, just to correct something you said earlier about the image signature verification. So that's a little bit separate. The way you described that is an effort that actually I think is being taken on by the compliance team. I think Tiago found a separate issue that another group in GitLab is working on. So it's one thing to make sure that containers are only generated from trusted images, but that's kind of outside the scope of where we're focused. What we're focused on is once the container is generated, how do we make sure that it doesn't change from that point forward? And actually what I see here in AppArmor, it looks like it might solve that, where you're preventing writes to certain directories or certain files. Yeah. That's the kind of functionality that I was looking to see to address that requirement, to make sure that key configuration files in the container don't change after it started running.
Okay. Yeah.
So that actually looks really promising to me. I'm excited to see that.
Okay. Yeah. Thank you. Yeah. So the solution is quite simple. We have the profiles here. As you can see, like writing those profiles is maybe not the nicest thing in the world you can do, but we can simplify it with adding some UI or something like that in the future, as we should have for policies and other things. So I will use that allow ping. And I'll go to, and I'll just show you how easy it is just to apply it to your working like deployment. So I just add annotation. So currently it's in beta. It should be soon, I hope, as a part of the Kubernetes, but it is already in the Kubernetes. But it's just uses annotations and not separate kind of manifest file. So I'm using allow ping, and I'll just do apply deployment YAML file. I'll just wait for it to actually execute it. I'll just check. Okay, now I should be able to go here. I should still be able to ping. Yeah, but if I'll do cat etc pass to be actually, if I'll do the same thing as I did previously, so I'll try to echo hacked into the system. Maybe I'll do something like this. I want to do hack to etc pass w, and I'm gonna read it. So it will not allow me to do it, right? Because actually it will exit with the code that this is not allowed to do it for you. If I'll do the same with Wazuh, like the container that is not using this annotation, so I'll have it will basically, it is not showing cat etc pass. Yeah, I don't know. I wanted to show you that it's working.
I think you did a greater than sign instead of another less than. There we go.
It's not showing anyway. But I can still write to other files, because in the config map I specified I want to deny the etc. So I can still do the writing like echo test to let's see, root test, and I can read this test file, and this will work, right? This will still work, but at the same time, the writing to other folders is not working. I have few profiles prepared here. Actually, you can read through the document later on how it's all being integrated, but it's actually a separate solution that is part of Kubernetes world already. It's not something that we need to install. The only thing we need to install is this AppArmor daemon set that will simply take those profiles and install them onto Node, and that's it. Okay. Active response blocking.
Alec, can I interrupt you a little bit?
Sure.
So regarding to AppArmor, there is also another profiler, system of profile that does similar things to this. It's called SecComp.
Yeah.
And Shopify a couple of some time ago put up a solution called Kube Audit that kind of wraps all up in a single application, and it's widely used for this type of usage. And there is another application as well. It's called Kube Bench that does very similar things.
Yeah. I wanted to do something natively to the Kubernetes. I didn't want to install another solution, but yeah, that's true. You have plenty of them. SecComp is also part of the Linux. That's just a different way to write those policies. Yeah, that's thank you, Zimmer. Okay, I'll jump to active response blocking because that's something that David mentioned. It's something that Falco does not support. Falco does not support it because I believe it was designed like this by default. Like Sysdig Secure, it's using another solution internally that uses Falco, but then extends it by adding this blocking mode. So I was trying to have something similar. There's actually a solution for that, but that will require you to have more solutions, like not only Falco, but also others. So you can have Falco, NAT, and actually there's an article about that. So Sysdig, Falco, NATS, and Kubeless. So I'll just quickly tell you what it is. Like NATS is a messaging platform. So it will, whenever, like Falco will report all alerts to NATS, and NATS based on that will do something. Kubeless is actually a platform that allows you to run functions as a service inside of Kubernetes. So they have a nice example here. They wrote like simple Python function that should delete the pod if some critical priority event is detected. So basically, like Falco reacts with critical event, then NATS gets that and executes the function in Kubeless, and this is how the active response blocking is handled. In terms of Wazuh, it's better because already it's a part of Wazuh. And it uses active response module. Alert is triggered, then executes the bash script. So like possibilities are limitless because what only limits you is the bash script. The only thing that there's a difference between those two solutions is that if we have the Wazuh agent in the container, we don't want the container to have access to Kubernetes cluster, to master node. So we should not allow the Kubernetes pod and containers running in the pod to manipulate with things that are happening on the master level. And if we want to be able to delete the pod from the container side, that's not really a good way to do it because we can easily expose the credentials to Kube API, and that's the main difference in terms of Falco and that solution with NATS and Kubeless. That will be those separate solutions that will not require you to have credentials to the system, to the Kubernetes system.
Could it, something like this, so definitely can take actions that the Kubernetes API supports. Could it also take an action if we give it credentials to the containers running, or a container running, could we have it then, SSH into the container and take actions in the container itself, like kill a process or delete a user or, or disable a user or something like that?
Theoretically, yeah, it is possible. You need to be able from the container to access the Docker that is running on the node. So by using like volumes, you can have that. And yeah, technically it is possible just to use the Docker.
Mm-hmm. It would seem to take, without requiring credentials on each container, it seems like the way to, not to detect the operations that you'd want to take actions on, but to take the actions, an agentful, rather than agentless, that's a word, an agent-based solution would probably be preferred because the agent then is already running on the container, so you don't need access to it, and then it would be waiting, listening for things to do. That wouldn't be necessarily the way we detect events to take action on. That's how we take action. So it seems like the actions are in two areas: Kubernetes itself and inside the containers. And I'm not sure how much in this environment customers would want one or the other. I'm just thinking about what's technically kind of feasible and possible, not what actually customers would want to do. I'm not sure about that part.
Well, and it looks like with AppArmor, you're able to do most of the blocking functions that you need.
For accessing files.
Are you able to, for files, are you able to prevent processes from being run with AppArmor? Maybe I missed that. I thought you could do that as well.
Yeah, you can do it. So, but you need to be proactive. You need to proactively configure it to disallow using other functions or allow only to use a certain process.
Yeah. But like something AppArmor would not be able to do, perhaps, is something like, let's say a container makes a TCP connection to somewhere on the internet that is not already approved for it to connect to, or whitelisted for it to connect to. And you may want to create a, maybe I'm coming with crazy stuff, but create a ticket for this operations center to go research that, right? Where it's not sure, but like that's that kind of active response. I don't know if we're considering, use cases like that, like go push work to a person to go investigate something. That's not something AppArmor would do, perhaps, or maybe it would. I don't know.
I mean, if it can create an alert or a log entry, I consider that accomplishing that piece of the workflow.
Yeah, I'll have to check that if AppArmor has that, but by default it only prevents you from doing things.
Again, I'm not sure if we need something like that either, right? I'm just thinking about possibilities.
Can I just say one comment on that? So the AppArmor or SecComp, it's going to be based on the policy security pod security policy that has a couple of settings on a lower level. That's something that I think that if I was since the beginning, I would push us to do that even before network, even before Cilian, because that defines the basics of the permissions. And then with AppArmor, we, as Alan it's explaining in a very good way, we can build up on that. The other things that we're talking to, Wayne was mentioning, checking out the egress connections, that would be the job of the network policy, right?
Yeah, good point. That wasn't a good example.
And that goes back to the point that, well, it's going to be hard to find one solution that does everything. We need to try to look a little bit more on how probably Kubernetes is going to have something for that.
Yeah, yeah, exactly. Okay, I'll move forward to acceptance performance overhead. To be honest, I haven't tested it. Looking at theory, like Falco should behave better here because it just uses different concepts. So it has this little daemon that is sitting really close to the kernel, and it's getting all those events that are happening anyway, and it can then send it to the application, and the application reacts based on those events, while Wazuh is doing most of those things by pulling, checking, like doing some computations on the container. But I'm not able to compare them. I was not able to compare them, so I don't want to talk about this part. But I believe we need to do more investigations for that one. Then we have malware scanning, those nice to haves actually. So for malware scanning, we have Falco by default will not have it, will not support it. So you need to extend it. There is a solution called DAG that adds something to it, so it will run the scans, and then it will send the events to Falco, so Falco can react based on those events. In Wazuh, we have already integrated. It does not doing, I believe in free version at least, it does not, without integration to VirusTotal, it does not going to do the malware scanning using some antivirus scanner like ClamAV or Total Scan. So it will just try to look for rootkits. It will try to look for files that were changed, and based on that, it can make the decision that, oh, that was some malicious behavior in the container. The other solution, the third alternative, is like running ClamAV, for example, as a daemon set as a part of the cluster, and periodically run it for malwares and look for malwares. But that's something that we need to look what kind of features in that area we'd like to have.
Hey, I think Philippe has a comment.
Yeah, I want to interject here because that seems wrong to me, the way that we are presenting malware scanning here. In the Kubernetes world, what we would do is to scan the image before deploying it. And we have all the tools for that. We have container scanning already. We can maybe run ClamAV on the file system if needed. We generally don't do that on the file system during runtime for a good reason. Most of the time, the file system should be read-only. It's not done by anyone, but that's a good practice to follow.
I agree, but I agree in general.
Yeah.
And
if you connect the dots,
but
mention that.
Like
if you use Falco, for example, and you have file integrity, so if you're notified as soon as something is updated on your file system,
envision this case, Philippe, is there's a remote file inclusion and run vulnerability in the customer written app. So somebody can write to /temp and then run the program in /temp. Let's just assume it has such a vulnerability, a customer written app. /temp, we're not going to stop writes to, right? Temp is used for all sorts of temporary things, or reads from. So somebody could write a file to /temp. It could be, I don't know, a reverse shell via Meterpreter or something similar, and run it. And none of the file integrity monitoring would catch that, because it would say, because it's not looking for, it says writes and reads from /temp are fine.
But you would have a notification from Falco saying you have a new process coming from /tmp. This is more than suspicious.
You'd have a new process. Okay.
Yeah, so I guess that's where your application allow listing would come into play.
Okay,
so you're only allowing specific applications to run.
So let's say they trick it to run it out of cron, right? So it's not run directly, it's run kind of indirectly by the operating system. Would the application allow listing still catch that?
It will be detected. That's a new process. Yeah. You only have one process or maybe a few in the container. Falco will detect it right away. The only case, only other case that you need to cover is the files that would be uploaded, but they're not uploaded in the container. They are uploaded on the volume, and you need to check that volume on a regular basis, but it's not in the container per se. You never do that in the container because you want the container to do what it has been built for in the first place.
You upload that file to /temp. And it's a reverse shell via shell script. So you run it with bash. So you tell bash to go run, or it's a bash script. You tell bash to run it. Is that bash is not a new process? The script that bash is running is a new process. Would that be caught?
Yeah, of course. That's a new process anyway. It's a new PID, so Falco will
it's a new PID, but the PID is bash. Is that understanding, like, because you can
it's not a PID of the parent PID will be the same, but the PID of that process running, it's a new PID, so Falco would catch it anyway.
Okay. What if you change an existing shell script and insert a backdoor into an existing shell script that's already being run, and the next time it runs,
again, Falco will see it because you're changing the integrity of a file. You are writing to /user/ something, so Falco will report it anyway. And if you see that in your logs, that's super suspicious. That's something that should never happen.
you beat up all thoroughly and appropriately beat up all my use cases to see. So I'm starting to become more and more convinced, not convinced, but more and more convinced that other things would catch malware being run, and perhaps scanning the file system for malware is perhaps a low priority or not a requirement.
I would still keep that as a nice to have. Even if, we are able to 100% account for all of the scenarios, that makes, malware scanning entirely not add anything more from a practical standpoint to customer security posture. Yeah. There's an emotional aspect of what the customers are getting out of our tool as well. And that's a level of comfort. They may not have all of those things configured. Even if they do, some customers have boxes to check that, yes, I'm doing anti-malware scanning. Maybe it doesn't add any security value, but maybe it adds comfort value, right? Sure. Emotional value.
So 2 thoughts is, maybe they check that box inappropriately as they check it in the secure stage as they're building things, not after it's deployed. Maybe. The other is malware scanning all the existing files on a periodic basis. That's one of the ones in particular I'm concerned, not about performance impact, because you can make it lower priority, so it doesn't create a performance problem for the containers that are running, but a hosting cost that can take hours on depending on how many files there are and the size of them. So that actually might drive up customers' hosting costs. So it's just something we'd want to keep. Sure. No, but good point, Sam, and Philippe, and Alan, and everybody, and Zamir. So Alan, we interrupted you. Why don't you have you shown us everything you were planning to, or do you have some other things to show us?
I'm looking actually what's left. We have the vulnerability scanning, configuration, vulnerability detection. As we already discussed, like the one thing is that we have already that in secure stage. The other thing is that you're running the container that might be already deployed, and after some time, some vulnerability was found. And it's so as an alternative, what we could do, we could periodically perform scan on already deployed images. So we will just scan them, and your image that was deployed using GitLab is outdated, has outdated packages, and those packages has right now vulnerabilities, something like that. So the other thing is that Falco has that again using DACTA, but that's a discussion that we already have, where we should have those checks, if that should be during the runtime of the container or before.
Well, in their case, the same in my opinion, it's not or, it's and. It should be, you should make sure you're using the latest libraries, latest packages, and the appropriate configuration when you build the containers, but that can drift. After the container is installed, let's say the operating system vendor releases a patch, and you haven't rebuilt the container since that patch was created, and customers will want to know about that to say, hey, I need to rebuild my container because I need to pick up that patch, or or a container's been configured in a way either when built, although you can catch that when it's built perhaps, or after it's built, it's changed to be, the configuration is changed to not be secure. I still think we need those things, even though there are good ways to catch it as it's being built, but things outside the customer's control can change, where you have to detect those things after they're built as well.
Of course, yeah. What I'm saying is that after it's built and deployed, we can still run checks on those containers without going to running container. Container images. So there's no need for you to do scans on running containers. You can periodically scan already deployed container images. And we already.
What kind of tools did you find that would be good for that? Whether that's Falco related, Wazuh related, or other?
So okay, we have for Falco we could use DACTA if really wants to have that on running container. Any other solution like Claire, Anchor, what's next? Trivy. I don't know what's used on secure stage to check it, but all those solutions will work.
I think Claire and Anchor, they are the most used in the industry, and I think we use Claire. I think so. Philippe might be able to.
Philippe, do you know from your exposure on the secure side?
We use Claire, definitely. Well, we use the Claire DB, but we use Clar instead of Claire. I know my pronunciation is not great, but it's in the chat. It's in chat.
Okay, Clar. All right.
Which is something that doesn't require the Docker and Docker. That's why we switched to that.
Okay. And then we have configuration vulnerability detection. And here, the only solution that I found that is available is OpenSCAP. And Wazuh is using it. Falco is not. I don't know if we could configure it to detect things. OpenSCAP is trying to scan for your configuration if it is complies with some recommendations or some certifications like PCI and other. So that's the other solution. I don't know if we do that in the secure stage. We could. That's also part of the container security, like the container.
It's also another one where it's both, likely scan beforehand, but as the container is built or when it's built, and after it's actually deployed, because it could the configuration could drift after deployment.
Yeah. So Wazuh works perfectly with this one. They also have their own solution. They call it security configuration assessment. They just download the information from distributions like Linux distributions and checks if there is a package that is out of date and if has vulnerabilities, CVID assigned, and so on. The last thing, no need to give GitLab credentials to production Kubernetes or container environment. Falco, okay, finally we're gonna deploy it with daemon set, so there's no need for us to do it. For Wazuh, we're not going to automate it anyway. We're gonna just tell customers, oh, if you want to use it, just need to take those packages, run that script, and you'll have it already as a part of your container. So there's no need for us. I really don't think that the solution that we could have is, oh, give me your credentials to your nodes, and we're gonna install some agents there. No, we should avoid that solutions. So I believe both. That depends on how we're going to deploy it, but both will not require anyone from doing it.
So just to clarify that installation in daemon set, would that be a Helm chart that they need to install, or would that be, it would be a Helm chart then?
Yeah.
Or what would that look like? Okay.
Yeah, exactly. Let me look if I have anything for the demo. I believe that's all like what I have here. I can do exec just to check. Oh, I don't get. I just want one of the lists that we have for capabilities that we'd like to be able to detect. For example, being able to detect if a shell is created. So let me just do like open shell on one of the container. Of course, I'm doing it because I have privileges to do it, but there are options that you can SSH to your container. For some reason, it's misconfigured or something like that. So yeah, I'm gonna just run it, and it'll tell me, oh, that the shell was spawned in the container with attached terminal. As far as I know, Wazuh can also detect that. The only thing is that Wazuh should be installed on the host, not on the container itself, because then it cannot detect it. And I was not able to find a way to configure it to detect that someone is doing SSH or logging on the shell. I have also, the other one was unexpected outbound network connection. So I configure it to not allow to ping to gitlab.com, for example.
And that's one that you're able to block. Yeah.
You can block, or you can allow that you can only do external connections to certain like hosts, but I believe that's also that's what you can do.
Actually, to Zamir's point earlier, it's also overlap, not in a bad way, but overlap with what Cilium can do.
Yeah, exactly.
So I know we're at time here. Does everyone have time to go over? I know I still have availability.
Yeah, maybe 15 minutes at most for me, but I can.
Let's do it.
Okay.
So actually that's all what I have for now.
This is awesome and a whole lot to think about and digest.
Definitely.
I don't want to try to make decisions today. That was not the purpose of today. And also, we want Tiago to be part of the whole discussion and decision-making process. So he needs to, he'll, I'm sure, read the document and all the comments and view the recording. I don't know, just a whole lot to think about, that's for sure. I don't know, Sam, you were saying?
Yeah, thank you both very much for doing this research. I really appreciate it. It's great to see, where things line up against the requirements and what our options are. I agree. I don't know that we're at the point of making a decision, but it seems like perhaps a good next step would be, to put together a proposal of, where do we want to go? What would the proposed architecture solution look like to address the requirements? Is that, do you recommend going with AppArmor and Falco, AppArmor and Falco, and, XYZ other product? And maybe if we can get, your recommendation of what that complete picture looks like and what each piece would add as we layered it in, I think that would be really helpful for me. And then we can prioritize, where to go next from here.
Yeah, I'm
definitely.
seeing a lot of nodding.
Yeah, what we can agree on is about application LL listing, because we'll not choose either like Falco or Wazuh. We need to choose other solutions. So that maybe we could create a separate issue to work on that.
I consider, and Sam, I don't know what you think. I consider the proof of concept and analysis issue, we've completed it with this work. I think we create another issue to say, come up with proposal for how we architect it as the next issue. And then Alan and Zamir, you both work together on it.
And probably part of the proposal is that we can move the requirement as a must, as a nice to have, instead of must have, and then we can propose the best that we find, and then we can move from there. I like that. I like that we are not deciding anything right now. There's lots of information on the table, and we need some time to figure that out for sure.
Okay.
Which requirements did you want to move?
Not move, it's just set up as a nice to have, that because maybe we are going to have just a single application required for application whitelist, I think.
Yeah, like, let's say I think the way I interpret that is, like, we have must-haves and nice-to-haves, and we don't want to make architectural decisions just based on the must-haves, because then if we don't consider the nice-to-haves, we may make a different decision if we consider them all than if we just consider the must-haves. So we definitely want to implement the must-haves first, but we want to make the architectural decisions with the nice-to-haves in mind. Okay. So I think we have that. I think we know what Sam documented what the must-haves and nice-to-haves are. Or do we need more detail on that, Zamir, you think? Or
I don't think so. I think everything's there.
Okay. So
yeah, so I can create a new issue for that. I added a table back here. I guess what I'm envisioning is something like this that would be filled out, like, here's the proposed architecture from engineering that addresses 100% of everything, or as close as you can get to 100%. And then, we have that broken out by, what does each piece give us, that we can figure out how to prioritize, the different components.
And I think it's a great, we start with that table. I would add a column to it, and we'll do it in the issue rather than in addition to a Google, rather than a Google Doc. And I'm doing that to show that as an example, which is great. Is a pros and cons column too of each,
Sure.
Like, because whatever decision we make, it's not going to be all pros, right? They're going to be definitely some pros. That's why we choose, and some cons as well. Yeah, that sounds great. So great job. I want to reiterate what Sam said. Great job, Zamir and Alan, on this. Awesome stuff. And,
yeah, absolutely.
And we'll go ahead. So Sam, you'll close the current issue. Maybe just link the Google Doc, which we'll of course keep private inside GitLab.
Yep.
But still link it so other GitLabbers can find it. Close the issue as complete and create the new one for Zamir and Alan to put together the proposal.
Okay, and are we good if I'll drop that in 13.0 still, so this milestone, and is that?
Well, we probably won't do it.
Is that going to work?
In 13.0, but we'll surely start it now.
The first deliverable would be the proposal, right?
Yeah.
Yeah, the proposal can be done for for next one?
For next one, meaning 13.1?
Oh,
or?
you guys are talking about having the proposal done for 13.0,
The proposal,
right?
yes.
Oh,
Yeah, the
Cutoff
proposal for 13.0
is,
Yeah.
I mean, we're not delivering any code, right? But just
Yeah.
time-wise, the cutoff for 13.0 is, in the release is on what, is it the 22nd?
the 22nd.
So
So you would have the
basically,
proposal done by the 22nd.
I think putting together a proposal, it's not code, right? That we have to, test and build. I think
Right, so that gives you 2 weeks.
the proposal in 2 weeks seems, I'm seeing everybody nod. That seems reasonable. Yeah. It's
Yeah,
not the cutoff
and then,
for the MRs. It's the cutoff for the release, which gives us another week. So I think 2 weeks.
Yeah, and then roadmap wise, I mean, where I'd like to head with this, if we can all agree on the architecture and the proposal and where we're headed by the 22nd, then we spend 13.1 and possibly even 13.2, working on that. And hopefully, maybe, I mean, I don't want to speak for you because you're engineering, so you tell me if it's too much work, but, maybe we can release something at minimal by the end of 13.2 is what I'm hoping aspirationally.
Yeah, we don't know the architecture yet. We don't know where we agree or disagree on it, but
Right.
it seems like a reasonable goal to me.
Yeah, and we need to also think about the UX design of if we're going to choose one or another solution, how we're going to allow users to modify either rules like in AppArmor, like profiles, or adding macros in Falco, or configuring it using Wazuh, and how we're going to, if we're going to go with Wazuh, how we're going to deploy it eventually. So yeah,
It's
lots
a
of
very
things
good
to
point.
consider.
I'd say is definitely include tag Andy in that issue, so he starts thinking about that as well, in addition to Sam.
So my assumption was that for this initial work in 13.1 and 13.2, that there would be no UX to it, kind of like Cilium was initially, and that we would add that, in later stages. But that was my initial assumption. If we need some UX, as part of that minimal requirement, then yeah, let's loop in Andy and get those discussions started. But I was assuming that this would just be like documentation on how to do it for now.
Documentation, may auto install, Helm charts perhaps to install it.
Yeah, it would all be back end with, no front end work for this quarter.
So 13.2 would be just back end, no front end of the document.
13.1 and 13.2, yep.
13.1 and 13.2. Okay, no, it's good clarification on.
That was my assumption. I just, want to be transparent with what I'm imagining things going, and if that's not the way it needs to be, then please, let me know.
Maybe we can go also one by one. We go 13.1, see how it goes, and then we can we can readjust for 13.2.
Yeah, it'd be awesome if we had something to, we don't know what the work is going to be, so we don't know. It'd be great if we were able to release something in 13.1 and then, continue iteratively improving it in, 13.2 and beyond.
If we are going to use something as a Helm chart, for example, I think we can, in 13.1, we can have something on the cluster management apps pipeline as we did for
Let me guess, that's going to be AppArmor. Perhaps, but we'll see. We'll see. No, that sounds reasonable.
Yeah, that would be great, Zamir, if we could pull it into 13.1 for sure. I mean, I'm always happy to take it earlier.
Even if it's barely or not even usable by customers, but if they can actually at least see it and start getting a feel for it and evaluating it, that's great. Even if they can't use it yet. Awesome.
All right. Well, thanks. I appreciate it. I'll make those changes in the issues.
And I'll post the recording in our Defend Unfiltered and our team room as well. So thanks, everybody.